could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you, the door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today, learn the part and join the play. The world is here, let's take it for a ride. You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, and things. I don't have like a lengthy intro like I often have for these bonus shows. I'm just here. I'm still alive, despite many attempts to the contrary. And wow, we've come a long way. Now, I should clarify. Where we each count from, it's somewhat arbitrary. Some people start from the day they begin their social transition. Some people start from the day they first get access to HRT. Some people start from any number of possibilities. In my case, I couldn't remember when I'd started so many things, and they all happened at different times. So when I came across something that let me put a pin in the calendar and say, this will be day one, it was my legal name change, which is arguably the least important part of the whole process, unless you want to travel or do anything. But as for being yourself, the legal documents are just paperwork, but it was somewhere to stick a pin and count from. So it's 700 days. I have legally been Ember. Fuck yeah. Thank you for joining me. So I had a few ideas about what to talk about today. Some of it might have to do with like experiences along the way, but that's really, really hard because this past year has sort of been a constant string of traumas, and that's not what I want to talk about. That's not what I want this specific episode to be about, because while the world we live in has become a cruel hive of scum and villainy, being trans is beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful experiences of my entire life. I know it's not right for everyone, obviously, but I don't understand the ways of the cis people. You people have your identities, and I'm sure that's great for you. I just don't understand. I can't condone living that way. I'm teasing. There's a lot that could be said that could go into things, but I decided, rather than try to recount all the various things that have happened, or to filter out the ones that are less pleasant and focus only on the highlights, it might be more useful to dig into some aspects of the internet where people ask questions that don't always get answered. We do have a number of call-in shows here on the YouTubes where people can ask questions, usually from other cis people, but every now and then they'll ask a trans person a question about being trans. But there's other parts of the internet where they ask questions that they won't ever call in to ask, because it's a lot more anonymous when you're behind a keyboard. So I thought we'd take a look at some of those and see what interesting stuff pops out. If you're new here, my name is Ember, and I'm a transgender woman. I do a whole bunch of stuff here, including debunking pseudoscience, countering conspiracies, and trying to free people from the shackles of harmful ideology. If you're into that kind of thing, maybe hit the subscribe button and stick around. Now, with all that said, let's go to the interwebs. So I thought we'd start on the very trans positive side at the Trans Advocate website. This is an article called Ask Matt, where someone asked Matt, who is a trans man, what are the most common questions he gets? So it's a question about questions. And that seemed like a good place for questions. I know, weird, right? So Matt answered, and these are the 10 most common questions that he at least gets as a person who works at an organization called Trans Advocate. What could possibly go wrong? So, first up, what does transgender mean, and what is the difference between transgender and transsexual? Now, that's two questions, but since Matt was just remembering off the top of his head and it's his article, I'll let him do what he wants. What does transgender mean? Put simply, as many of you already know, a person whose gender identity does not align with what they were assigned at birth. And a lot of people have been taking issue with that terminology lately. Oh, assigned at birth. What do you mean? Yes, that's exactly what happens. Is someone takes a guess, it's usually an educated guess, but it is just a guess, and says, well, and probably girl, possibly boy, close enough. We're only wrong, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times out of 100. Who's to say? But it's probably one of those. Yeah, it's assigned. Often it's correct, but often it's not. If it were just observed, there wouldn't be, mistakes, because you can't actually observe gender. You can only observe what's visible. And the visible bit isn't even all there is to sex, which is separate from gender. There's internal genitalia. There's the gonads themselves. There's what hormones will be produced, whether those hormones will do anything, and all sorts of other factors. You can't observe those. So no, sex is not observed. It can't be, not for a newborn anyway. So transgender, your gender is different from the sex you were assigned at birth. What is the difference between transgender and transsexual? That depends. It's a context thing, right? Quite some time ago, there wasn't transgender. There was only transsexual. That was, I believe it was the Harriet Benjamin rules at the time. In order to be trans, you had to medically transition. You had to go completely all the way through the process. That's not actually necessary, or more precisely, it's necessary for some people and not others. So it became apparent in, the most recent handful of decades that not everybody needs full medical transition. And it was silly to make people go through the whole thing if that isn't what they actually needed. It's sort of like if you have colon cancer, removing your entire colon instead of just the cancerous part. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in that respect, a transgender person is a person who needs some kind of trans care in order to alleviate gender dysphoria or feel better about themselves, or any number of other things. That's just actualizing your true gender. A transsexual is someone who medicalizes. Depending on who you talk to and what the context is, it may have a difference between whether you're just talking HRT or whether you're talking every surgery the person can afford to have, which isn't the same as every surgery the person might need, but that's a whole other discussion. Number 2, Darth Gently says, I dislike the word transsexual very much. A lot of people aren't fans of it, which is one of the reasons it's largely been discontinued. A lot of people just say transgender. Transgender, I believe, was came into popular usage as a replacement for transsexual. So for a while they were synonyms, and it was considered impolite to say transsexual, but different people have different ideas about that. So number 2, who are you attracted to and who do you date? That's going to vary from everybody. That's not a trans person question. You know, there's cis people who could be attracted to men or women or everyone or no one or anything else. Like, what you are doesn't really determine who you're attracted to. Sometimes there's a relationship, but sometimes not. So this isn't really a trans person question. I could answer for myself, but it's very complicated. I'm an ace person, but I'm very, very romantic, and I'm not exactly sex repulsed. So as far as attraction goes, let's put it this way. I could be attracted to anybody potentially without regard to their plumbing. It doesn't really matter what's between their legs. It's more personality and brains and so forth. But that's just me. Everybody's going to be different. But again, being trans has nothing to do with that. I've always been that way. And I think most people have always been how they are. Duh. Oh, well. Number 3. How old were you when you knew? All right, now that is a legit question. I would ask in return, how old was a cis person when they knew? What does it mean to know? You know, like for some people, it's going to vary, right? Because there are people who know about the mismatch between what society thinks they are and who they actually are from a very, very young age. But there's other people who don't figure it out until later, often the onset of puberty or later in life. It all depends on when that triggering event happens where they go, hold the fuck on. I am not the person everyone thinks I am. And I need to do something about this misunderstanding, because there's a surprising number of agender people wandering around who don't really care what anybody calls them because they don't feel any sense of gender at all. And so it doesn't occur to them there's a problem until there's a problem, but that's a whole other thing. It's going to vary from person to person. For me, it was one of the first things I remember being aware of, possibly because I had such an extreme reaction. I'd always thought of myself as well as a girl when I was little, but as a woman. I've told this story before, but it's been quite a while since we did one of these updates, and there's a lot of new people, so I will tell it again. When I was somewhere around age 3, I was young enough that I didn't really understand what ages meant. My grandmother asked me what I'd like to be when I grew up. Well, I hadn't quite decided between a pirate or an astronaut or a spy. But the one thing I was sure of was that I wanted to be a mother. And so I told her that. And she said, I'm sorry, honey. You can't, not because there's a law or there's a rule, but you don't have the right equipment. Well, it turns out she was mistaken about that, but I wouldn't find that out for decades. I was devastated. I cried for days because I knew who I was and my body wasn't correct to that. And that was very upsetting, understandably. C'est la vie. For some people, it happens around that time, somewhere around 3, 4, 5, when they first start to become really self-aware, when they develop a sense of identity and they're thinking of themselves as a person rather than just reacting to stimuli like, are you hungry or are you sleepy? And they start having thoughts. Why this? Why that sort of thing. They'll suddenly realize there's a disconnect between what I feel and who I'm told by others I'm supposed to be. They won't realize what it means. They won't have the words to express it for a very long time. But I can tell you from experience that often these young children may say something like, when you call them a girl and they're actually a boy, they might say, "No, I'm a boy," or vice versa. If you call a little girl a boy, she might say, "No, I'm a girl." In the same way, and for the same reason, is when you say to a cis child, "Are you a boy or a girl?" They will tell you because they know who they are. It's part of their identity. So there's that. But it does vary for everybody. For me, it was stupid young, and in some ways I'm grateful. It was devastating at the time. It was one of my earliest traumatic experiences, and it left a mark on my psyche. But because it left a mark on my psyche, I can remember it. And the fact that it's there, in some ways, it's a relief because, as you may know, a lot of children get abused in the United States, and I was no exception. I got abused kind of a lot. And that's still not an easy thing to look back on retrospectively. But all too often, people say something along the lines of, "Oh, you must be trans because some kind of abuse happened in your early childhood and it made you that way." That incident with my grandmother preceded all of it. So I knew I had a keen awareness of my identity as a woman or a girl at that age before anything else happened. And if I didn't have that, I am certain the bigots would hammer at me with the traumatic experiences of my childhood to tell me, "You're not really trans, you've just been abused," which is shitty as hell. But they'll do it. Have you had the operation? Well, that's a complicated question in my case. I've had some operations. There are others I still need. I know what they mean by the operation, but in my case, that's not just one operation. And that's all I'm going to say about that today. But also, that's not a thing that it's generally cool to ask people. Like, you don't walk up to random guys at a bar and say, "Hey, are you circumcised?" Like, maybe they'll be okay with it, but they might not be. And you don't know. Why would you ask that of a stranger? You don't walk up to random women and ask if they have a Brazilian. Maybe they'd be okay with it, but probably not. So maybe you shouldn't ask about that. It's extremely impolite to ask people about their genitals. So maybe don't do that. Number 5, how did your family react? Mixed, mostly on the positive side. Partly because I have a thing to show you folks. While I'm looking for that, I want to mention that my oldest child came out to the family a couple of years before I did. When they came out to me as non-binary, they were worried that I wouldn't be accepting and whatnot, and I came out to them in turn because the way I expressed it at the time was that I understood myself to be much more closely aligned to the feminine end of the spectrum, but I didn't think I could ever get there. And so non-binary was the best I could do, because while I didn't feel happy as a non-binary person, I didn't feel so much extreme discomfort as I did as not expressing as a non-binary person. It helped with my dysphoria. And at the time, I thought it was the best I could do until I learned elsewise, which is one of the reasons education is so important. Now, naturally, being a kid who grew up at the end of the last century, I was exposed to trans people in media. I saw the Jerry Springer show. I saw Ricky Lake. I saw movies and all sorts of media with trans people on them. And every time I saw a trans person in the media, I would ask an adult. I would be like, that right there, that's me. That's how I feel. And they'd say, "No, honey, That's just fiction. They made those up for those shows. That's not a thing a person can really do. Fuck me. Anyway, I digress. I wanted to show you folks something. If I can find it. Where did I put it? Okay. So I preface all of that to say my family already had to go through accepting a trans person when I literally just stopped caring. I was at the end of my rope. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll die, but I don't care. 700 days. We're still going. Actually, that was before I got my legal name change, quite a ways before, but not important, not important. What I wanted to get to was so many people that I knew IRL and online were surprised when I finally started making changes. And they were like, I didn't have any idea. I didn't have any clue. These are my Facebook cover photos from a decade ago. Now I want to call your attention to the 2013 one here, which is literally rainbows, hearts, and flowers. And then the next one is rainbows in the ice. And the next one is, well, not strictly trans color coded, is definitely in the area. And of course, this one just straight up like no one could possibly have known. How was anybody to ever tell? I had occasion to go wandering through some of my older photos a couple of days ago. Someone was asking me about a conjunction between solar bodies, and I had a photo of a conjunction like that from years and years ago. So I was digging through my old photos, and I came across some of these, and I'm like, holy shit, Ember. I was just like waving flags, like literally. I was like, dee, 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 dee. Nobody noticed. But whatever. But also, a big part of my family members who might be inclined to be less accepting already stopped talking to my part of the family many, many years before. So I didn't really have to worry about it all that much because they'd already cut us all off. So whatever. It's not important. Oh, let's see. So what discrimination or prejudice have you experienced? Quite a lot. Those of you who've been around a while know there's a lot. I could go on and on and on and on and on. That has to do with one of the reasons I've needed several surgeries. That has to do with one of the reasons why, if you paid careful attention to the intro, there's some unusual things in that mix that you may not have been expecting. It's one of the reasons I need more surgeries, and one of the reasons that I haven't been able to work in 7 months at this point. You could say I experienced some discrimination and prejudice, yes. It's been extremely unpleasant. That said, I've been more alive than I ever have in my life. I felt more me than I ever have in my life. The horrors I've experienced from hateful people, but still experienced, compared to the joys I've experienced, I can't say it's not worth it, even with all of that bullshit. But also, there's no reason there ever should have been all that bullshit. 7, what do hormones do? Oh my goodness. And this is also 2 questions. What do hormones do? Well, hormones do a whole lot of things. Insulin is a hormone, for example, that helps control blood sugar and metabolism. I think this is specifically referring to sex hormones, which do a few different things, including having stuff to do with metabolism and bone growth and a bunch of things. But specifically, they usually affect your secondary sex characteristics, like the shape of your body and the shape of your face and the shape of your bones and the shapes of other things. And holy shit, they are really effective. I can't say I'm sad about that. I kind of wish I'd gotten my hands on some when I was a lot younger. Mileage will vary, as they say, but the effect is powerful at any age. Now, which direction you're going, what you're trying to achieve, that can vary, and the effectiveness can vary quite a bit. I know quite a few trans men who cannot grow a beard to save their lives. Maybe it'll happen over years and years, maybe not. I know quite a few trans women who can't grow boobs to save their lives. And then vice versa. There's a number of trans men who are fuzzier than Santa Claus, and a number of trans women who need special ordered brasiers to support what they've got going on, to put it nicely. Everyone's genetic code has the details of how your body would develop along the other track, because it turns out it's not actually a binary. Everyone's body has the code for how that body would grow boobs if properly stimulated, how that body would grow a beard if properly stimulated, and all the other things you can grow. Fixing your hormones gives you the opportunity to find out what your body has in mind, I suppose, for that particular kind of development. And honestly, how do you even know you're cis if you don't try the other way and see how you feel about it? You know, for funsies, for science even. Do you have to take them for the rest of your life? That's complicated. You have to have some sex hormones. You don't necessarily have to take HRT, but if you have your ability to make your own removed, and this isn't just for trans people, this is, cis people who have those organs removed for other reasons. If you have your organs removed, you have to take exogenous hormones. It doesn't really matter which one. I mean, it matters for how your body looks and how it performs and muscles and bones and all that stuff. But you have to have something or your body won't function correctly. If you're completely deprived of hormones, of sex hormones, you'll develop a whole lot of problems relatively quickly. Osteoporosis can start to set in just a couple of months, for instance. So yeah, you need some hormones wherever you get them. What are the health risks of transition? That is a very lengthy conversation, best had with your physician. However, it also depends on what you're doing and what you need, right? Like if you don't need lower surgery, you don't have to worry about any of those health risks. If you don't need hormones, you don't have to worry about those health risks. But it's also going to vary from person to person. And there's so many different factors. You really got to talk to a doctor about that, a physician. And on that note, a bit of a pro tip. Contact other trans people in your community and find out which doctors they go to and compare notes. Because often people feel like they get forced into one doctor or another based on network and insurance and all these other things. And some doctors are not really educated on trans care. And so will be very hesitant to provide trans care to your detriment. Other doctors are educated, but are reluctant to provide care for other reasons, often their own prejudices about trans people. So yeah, there are doctors out there who will talk to you as if they're affirming, but then they will gatekeep you at every opportunity. If they give you access to hormones at all, they will restrict the dose to a level that it does nothing. Because what everybody needs varies from person to person, but there are doses so low, they won't do anything. And that's what they'll give you. And they'll keep you there as long as they can. So make sure your doctor actually is serious about trans healthcare, or you're just going to be wasting your time and money. So that's the thing to keep in mind. But do discuss risks with them, because people have clotting risks on certain hormones in certain levels, and embolisms, and it's the same sort of risks that cis people have on the same hormones, right? Like women who take birth control, for example, have a slightly higher blood clot risk. It's a legitimate risk, but it's the same risk cis women have, you know? Similarly, trans women are at a much higher risk of breast cancer, but that doesn't mean cis men never get breast cancer. Likewise, trans men can develop prostate cancer. When you start changing your parts, you become more susceptible to illnesses that you wouldn't have otherwise been susceptible to, but you lower your susceptibility to other illnesses that are typical of the direction you're coming from, whichever what you're doing. So yeah, you got to discuss it with a physician. It's very complicated. Number 9, how did you feel when you knew? Well, I guess to go with what do we mean by new? Are we talking about the story I told at the beginning with my grandmother? Because if that's what we mean, I was pretty devastated, which is why I said that. If you mean new as in, well, weirdly enough, when I decided to actually go for transition, I was kind of coming from a similar place. It was more of a depression sort of thing. It was more a numbness, a I no longer care kind of thing. And so if it went horribly badly, I wasn't really planning to stick around long anyway. So why not give it a shot? Why not see if maybe I could reignite a spark within me to want to continue to be alive? And it's strange how giving a person something that they've desperately needed their entire lives but had to live without can reinvigorate them. It's sort of like forcing a person to hold their breath by suffocating them until they're on the verge of death and then letting them get oxygen. Much better to let them have oxygen sooner, but the oxygen does have a way of preventing them from dying immediately. So that's something. What was it that made you know that you were trans? Or, well, this again, Matt, the author, is a trans man. So what made you know that you were a man? I could tell you how I knew I wasn't a man. All the times people said man up, for instance. I was like, no, not me. No, sorry. You're barking up the wrong tree. But every time people tried to segregate people, in kindergarten, students line up, boys over there, girls over there. I knew where I belonged, and where I was told to go was the opposite of that. Every time that sort of thing happened, bathrooms, changing rooms, I did everything throughout my entire childhood. Number 10, what are some of the differences you see between living as a man and living as a woman? That's interesting, because Matt is a trans man, so he's going the other direction. This could be a whole conversation, and I may save that for another time, because I think I'd like to talk with Dr. Ben about it, because being a trans man, he's going the other direction, and I think it would be interesting for us to compare notes. Off the top of my head, obviously, clothing, fashion, what we're allowed to wear, what we're encouraged to wear, what we're rewarded for wearing. For example, hats with flowers on them. I can wear those now. I get complimented for wearing these. The last time I went to the grocery store, a woman came up to me and said, I love your hat. I used to have beautiful hats like that with flowers on them. And people called me the hat lady. But now I wear hoodies all the time. And so I don't wear my hats and no one calls me that anymore. So I guess you're the hat lady now. It was a beautiful little interaction. I couldn't have done that before. For instance, there's a few other changes that aren't necessarily social, but are definitely a difference in how one lives. Sensitivity to smell being a big one. Holy shit. People do not know how they smell. It's mind-blowing how much more acute your sense of smell becomes when you're heading in the feminine direction. It's unreal. Also, flavors change. I didn't used to like pineapple. I didn't used to like cherries. I didn't used to like white chocolate. There's a bunch of other things. I could go on, but those come to the top of my head. Because taste, smell, all of these things, they're chemical signals. And it turns out when your neurological system is running on the correct chemistry, it functions a whole lot better. And that's pretty handy. Aunt Jer says, Ember, is anyone slut-shamed you for showing your shoulders? Not today. No, actually, I don't know that anyone. One of the advantages of being an old lady trans woman is I didn't have to put up with the purity culture bullshit as much in school. Like, there was still the purity culture as in gender do this, gender do that. But it wasn't nearly the same extent of like trying to show your shoulders as a girl in school. It just wasn't a thing I had to deal with, really. So I managed to dodge much of that. I don't know that anybody's come at me about my shoulders as an adult, but as an adult, it is a little different. But I do get slut shamed for other reasons, which is also kind of fun considering I haven't voluntarily had sex in close to a decade at this point. But whatever makes him happy, I guess. Oh, holy crap. All right, I could go on and on with that, but I have other things I wanted to show you folks, and I spent way too long on just this one. So my heater's running again. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I will return and we'll move on to some Quora questions, because what could possibly go wrong there? Yeah, I think a really quick break shall work. So bear with me here.
Ember.
Oh, Ember.
Miss Ember.
Oh, great Ember, tell me what I'm doing.
Appreciate you, Ember.
Love Ember. She's great.
Bottom of the barrel Ember bullshit.
Oh my God, Ember.
Ember. Ember.
Ember.
We love you, Ember.
You rock at that, Ember.
Ember is the queen.
We're neighbors, Ember.
I see you, Ember.
Hey, Ember is hot.
All righty. I thought I'd have, I did turn off my heater. I thought I'd have more time to drink because hydration is important. And if you want to know more about that, tune into my morning shows every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern. At least for now. My goodness. It's been hard getting people to come to those morning shows. Andrew says your shoulders are causing me to sin. My apologies. Not really, though. I mean, spreading sin is sort of what I do. Being, an evil anti-theist or whatever, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, Deviant Outcast says quite a lot. Let's find out. I'm a bit busy, but Ember, I had to, at the very minimum, listen in and be a teeny tiny part of your celebration, because having managed to finagle my way into the outer rings of your life this year and a half is easily one of my greatest achievements. A note on that. You say finagle as if it wasn't like you had to trick me or something. That's not the case. And also, I don't know as I'd say outer rings. I don't really do a ring thing, but whatever. Anyway, and so I may. You're an inspiration, a light delightfully flickering, telling those of us who take a second to stop and look that there's an amazing, kind, beautiful, smart, and funny as fuck woman there. I appreciate the kind words. I wish I were funnier. I mean, I know it's hard dealing with constant nonsense. It's hard to be funny when you get death threats daily, you know? But I feel like if I were funnier, if I were able to be more comedic and less dramatic all the time, I might do better on YouTube. Or maybe I should be dramatic and like lean hard into the drama and everything is the end of the world. But I should do something, you know? I'm too stable. But I digress. And hey, I, for one, am thankful to you. I'm thankful to your strength and ability to reach into that stubbornness inside you and utilize it to tell the world to fuck off with its nonsense. Because deep inside, I think you know very well what the rest of us already know. You're not just valuable, you're precious and needed, if not for any other reason. So the fact I can't wait to see what you'll achieve in your life. I love you, Ember. Oh, thank you, Deviant. You were too sweet to me. I wonder sometimes. I was one of those kids. They used to call us gifted kids. They said, "Oh, you can achieve so much. You have to live up to your potential." But then every time we try to actualize our potential, we get shut down. It's very strange. I know there's a concerted effort. It sounds conspiracy theory-ish, but we know it's true from the billionaires themselves saying so. The oligarchs in charge of the United States trying to keep people who say things that I say from having a voice. But that hasn't always been the case. And while there have been times when I've had a louder voice than others, around the year 2000-ish, I had a radio show with around 1 million listeners. There's another time, around 2008, I had enough influence that I was asked to help a certain person, a senator from Illinois, run for president in a minor way. So there are times when I have shown a little bit more brightly than others, but lately it's been really hard to reach like beyond my existing, or even reach the people I can already reach in theory, but I digress. Deviant says, "I'm telling you, I love you." I believe you, Deviant. I love you too. And all you other folks like Sapphire, pause this light. My goodness. Playing with the emojis, which don't show up on the stream chat, and Aunt Jur, who's sinning, and I see Darth Gently hanging out in there, and all you other wonderful people who may be lurking, who may be dropping chats here and there, but yeah. Oh, and Ember Lynn's here. Hooray. And anybody else that I didn't happen to catch. It's thank you all so much for joining. Some milestones are bigger than others. This one, 100 weeks. Like 700 days doesn't mean much. In particular, it's close to 2 years, but not quite. But 100 weeks, now that's a nice solid number. And it has been a long time since we did one of these. I probably should have rewatched my old ones to remember how I did it before. But I don't know. I'm at this stage where I don't just find pre-transition Ember cringy, but I find early transition Ember cringy. And I knew it would happen. At the time when I was being early transition Ember, I knew future Ember would find then present Ember to be cringy. There was no help for it because I had no idea what I was doing and I had to find myself, and I was aware of that fact. But still, it's kind of interesting to me, at least, that I had the self-awareness to know that future me would find then present me cringy. And then now that that's present me, I find past me cringy. Like, I knew it would happen, and yet here I am. And it's so weird. Oh my goodness. Gracie is Spacey. Nice name. Very cool. I am, among other things. But yes, today is about transness, because as evidenced by the thing, 100 weeks. Progress for science and things. All right, I did have another thing I wanted to get to. So let's go to Quora, the home base of all reasonable discussions or something. My goodness, what could possibly go wrong here? So Quora, what are the most common questions people asked about transgender women? Okay, this is from a year old, and it's posted by a person named Brittany Smith, who is currently transitioning, or at least a year ago was, and has a trans flag as her symbol. So probably fine. Oh, goodness. So Brittany says, I can go with some of the questions I've seen. I will stick to the non-judgmental questions or anti-trans type questions that I typically see. I think she means she'll leave out. I don't know. We'll see. We will see what comes up. So question 1. Yes, Sapphire, nothing crazy ever happens on Quora. No, that's not how that works. Number 1, do you feel like you were trapped in the wrong body? So this one has been coming up a lot over the last couple of years. That's not what we actually mean, right? It's just a quick way to convey the information in a way that a cis person would understand. Like, people often say, I don't understand what it means to be a trans person. I support you. I see your humanity. I want you to be happy and I want you to be healthy. I just don't get it. And I say, okay, well, imagine, like, say you're a woman, right? You wake up one morning in a man's body. Not, you feel like you're a man in your current body. You are you, but you're in a male body. You're still you, though. And so you feel like your parts are wrong, and the way your body moves is wrong, and the way your skin feels is wrong, and all these various things. So it's difficult to describe, but that's one way to kind of conceptualize it. We don't literally mean we're trapped in the wrong body. My body is my body. What we mean is that our plumbing isn't assembled correctly, you might say, to put it in a family-friendly kind of way. Mark is here. Hello, Mark. Lovely to see you. Thank you. We're marching along for science. Mark's got a show coming up in a little bit, but I'm so glad you could drop by. So yay. So yeah, we don't actually feel like we're trapped in the wrong body. That's just a boiled down way to convey information about what the experience is like. Number 2, does HRT change your voice? It depends. Estrogen, not really so much. Testosterone, oh yes. I've heard, we've all heard trans men. In fact, there's a bit of a trend on the TikToks and elsewheres where people record their voice after a certain amount of time on testosterone, and you can hear it go down and down and down and down and down, and it's pretty delightful. Not so much the other way with estrogen. It stops having a testosterone influence on your voice, but if you want to get your voice into a different register, you have to voice train. And that's a pain. I worry about it a lot less than I used to for various different reasons, but yeah, at HRT, it's hit or miss. Mostly miss, going in the feminine direction. Number 3, why did you hide the fact you were transgender, and why didn't you transition sooner? Well, that's a very personal question. I actually didn't. when I was young and people told me what I was supposed to be, after a while, I just got tired of correcting them. They told me that it wasn't possible to be who I am. I knew they were wrong because I knew who I was, and they didn't. But you get worn down after a time. So I didn't hide, per se. I just stopped correcting people. For a very long time, I just was me. And for a very long time, as I mentioned earlier, I just kind of took refuge as a non-binary person. I was told it was impossible to transition. And by the time I figured out it wasn't, I thought I was too old. I'm glad that I was wrong about that. But for a very long time, I thought non-binary was the best I could do. But whenever anybody actually asked, I was open about that. I said, no, I'm not a man. I'm something else. I didn't really have the terms for it, but yeah, I didn't really hide it. As to why I didn't transition sooner, well, that has to do with education. And like I was talking about earlier, the adults in my life who either straight up lied to me or were very confused about reality. Because whenever I saw a trans person depicted in media and I tried to communicate how I felt, they would say, no, that's not real. Jerry Springer show is fictional. The Denzel Williams show is fictional. You know, none of those, you can't actually transition. That's not a thing that's possible to do. Never mind that every one of these people lived at a time when there were really famous trans women who were famous for being trans women. Whatever. I don't know. Maybe they thought it was all fiction, or maybe they didn't and they were just lying. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, I was led to believe that it wasn't possible. And once I finally gained the language to describe what I felt like and what I needed, well, I was in a situation where I really couldn't. I was in a job, for example, where they would just unalive me if they knew. I mean, they did actually. At one of my former workplaces, there was a rumor that one of the guys was gay. I don't even know if it was true, but they beat the shit out of him. If they'd known about me, they would have killed me. So yeah, it wasn't really possible. Although, the instant it did become possible, and I mean the instant it became possible, I took it. It's just shitty that it took so long to get to that point. It's so wild. Number 4, does your beard stop growing on HRT? Mileage will vary on that one. Probably not. I have yet to meet a trans woman whose beard stops growing. Body hair growth will decrease. It will thin, it will lessen, but it doesn't stop. And your beard is particularly pernicious. So probably not, but it's different for everybody. So your results may vary, but you're probably going to either need to get used to specialized shaving techniques or do something like electrolysis or laser to permanently remove it. Number 5, when will you get the surgery? Well, again, that's a very, very personal question that you really shouldn't ask people. Don't ask men if they're circumcised. Don't ask women if they have a Brazilian. Don't ask trans people if they've had the surgery, when they're getting the surgery. That said, my entire purpose here is to be a visible trans person so that other trans people know they're not alone, and to answer their questions and also the good faith questions of cis people who just want to understand trans people better. So in that respect, like I said earlier, my situation is very, very complicated. I need more than one for a lot of reasons that I don't have time to get into. Some of them have to do with some of that discrimination that I mentioned earlier, because not all of it was just discrimination, if you know what I mean. But I digress. A big part of when a person can get any surgery has to do with the medical system they're under. Here in the United States, you're subject to the whims of insurance and whether insurance even covers what you need. In some states, yes. In other states, absolutely not. It's a real roll of the dice. Consult your local physician, I suppose. Number 6, are your breasts real? Again, don't ask people this. Don't ask cis women this. What the fuck is wrong with you? Cora, my goodness. In my case, yes, I am very proud of these. They're not even done growing, but I am. Here, I'll even scoot back. Now, this is not the most flattering. I designed this dress in 2020 when I still looked very boy-shaped. And no, I designed it in 2019, but I received it in 2020. And by the time I received it, I had COVID really badly. And then I gained a whole bunch of weight from recovering from COVID, and I couldn't fit into the damn thing. And now I need a fucking ribbon so it isn't a tent on me. But I digress. In any case, it's not the most flattering. It's just I designed it for me years ago. So I thought it would be nice to wear it tonight. But in any case, they're real. They're still growing, but they're real. And I'm super proud of how far they've come. That said, store-bought is fine. There is nothing wrong, whether you're trans or cis, with having augmentations. I mean, cis women have to, sometimes if you get breast cancer, you have to have a mastectomy. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with having an implant. There's nothing wrong with them being too big and needing a reduction. Do what's right for you and don't feel bad about it. The whole point is to feel good about being alive and being you. Do whatever you need. How did you decide on your new name? Oh, so this is a little bit different. Now, I realize there's a lot of women named Ember running around today, but at the time, no one went by Ember. It was actually something of an oddity. Pixar came out with a movie called Elemental, I think. Something. It's been a while. There's a character who is a fire character. It's a world full of elemental people. There's fire elementals and water elementals and air elementals and so on. And the main character is named Ember, but she's a girl. And my kids thought that was hilarious. They were like, oh, there's another person named Ember, but she's a girl. And I'm like, imagine that. I picked my name at a time when it was kind of traditional for non-binary people to pick names that are basically objects, like rock or something. I guess that's fine. But in my case, it was more poetic. I was feeling very burned out. Kind of at the end type situation. And it was as much hope as determination. It was saying, I really, really wish there's still a spark somewhere inside me that I can rekindle and learn to love my life again. I turned out to be right, but I didn't know that at the time. At the time, it was just faith. So yeah, that's where I got my name from. I wanted to be the spark to reignite what used to be a bonfire. Maybe we'll get there someday. Number 8, do all trans people know they are trans as a kid? No, not all trans people do. Like we mentioned earlier, a lot of us figure it out at a very young age. A lot of us, it's puberty. They start to see their bodies change and they go, oh shit, this is wrong. Some of us, it's even later still. They never feel quite right, but they don't understand why. Sometimes these people don't experience terribly strong dysphoria. There's just something off, but they can't put their finger on it. And then later in life, something happens that gives them euphoria. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize I could feel like this. And then they start to investigate it, and then their egg cracks, and then they transition. And that's delightful when you see it, because seeing people transition to pursue their joy, not to escape their suffering, it's an entirely different experience. When you can have both, that's delightful. But c'est la vie. Theo asks, what was that spark? It's hard to say. Like, there's a few different things. It is a metaphor, so there's no specific thing in the description. It's a poetic sort of deal. But there are a few things that spark for me, like several of the sciences. When I get onto a bit of a roll about space or physics or genetics or psychology or biology or geology and a bunch of others, I don't know how it looks to you folks, but internally I light the fuck up. Like, there's a furnace inside that kicks on, and it just starts pouring energy to feed the neurons. So I can just, it creates like, well, a brainstorm, to borrow a really old term. Like, all the neurons start firing, and it's so cool. Now, that's just one aspect of what gets me worked up, that fills me with passion, that fills me with a sense of being alive. Another one is dancing. I really miss dancing. I'm hoping someday I can do it again. That's one of the things that I lost the ability to do after the things that happened this past year. I don't want to dwell on it at the moment, but sometimes you'll catch me chair dancing, which it's not the same, but it's nice. Especially when there's music. I should put my shows to music. I realize sometimes it's disturbing, it's disorienting, it doesn't really fit, but sometimes it does. I don't know. Maybe I need to put like a soundboard with certain songs so I can like change tracks depending on the mood and the tone of what's going on in the show. Like a live producing sort of thing. It could be neat. Maybe I'll experiment it. I'll experiment with it. Words are hard, folks. All right. We've been going for an hour. I'm going to finish these up, and then we'll wrap up the show. I may do something like this again, but I do transfactuals from time to time, where I will address certain specific things dealing with the trans and intersex communities. Look for, Bree and I did one the other day, covering a debate review between Helen Joyce and Helen Weberly. We ended up making it a part 1 because there was so much to say. So we're going to be trying for part 2 Saturday evening, I think. It's on my channel. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the notifications, all of those things. In fact, you could go to the video right now and click notify me, and it'll tell you when the video is about to start. But we're going to try for a part 2 for that. I have another transfactual set up to go that I'm thinking of doing Thursday, but maybe who the hell knows? They happen by surprise, but there is another one set to go where I will be answering Trent Horn's one question trans people can't answer, which is sort of what I was going for here, is like questions trans people can't answer. But it turns out I had a lot more to say about the questions we got than I'd anticipated. And so we're only about a third through the stuff I had prepared for this show, but that's okay. That's okay. Oh, goodness. Robin Hood asks, how many hats do you have? I don't even know. I haven't counted in quite some time. I've got 7-ish right here next to me, and I've got another box full of them over there, and another box full of them over there, and at least one in this box down here. I have a lot of hats. I don't have nearly enough hats, but I have a lot of hats. And that kind of makes me happy too. Fashion is another thing that it ignites a different part of my brain, but it's definitely there. And it makes me very happy. Good smells make me very, there's a whole thing. There's a whole thing. Anyway, I want to finish the questions so we can wrap up the show. All right. Number 9, did your sexual orientation change with your gender? 2 points. First, Your gender doesn't change, actually. You transition to align your body to your gender. You don't change your gender. You can't. We've tried that. That's what the whole conversion therapy thing was people trying to convince people their gender was different than what it is. It doesn't work. It's torture. Torture does not ever help people. Not ever. So no, that said, when you transition, not change your gender, but transition, sometimes, for me personally, again, it's weird because I'm a very romantic asexual person who's not actually really sex averse. I don't mind sex, but there's other things I could be doing with my time, like having garlic bread, for example. But people feel differently. The point is, it's a little different for me, but for a lot of people, their orientation does change. What studies we have show that it's about a third. Some people start heterosexual and end up heterosexual, which means their orientation reverses as their status changes. Some people end up attracted to what they were attracted to and other things. And then some people end up staying attracted to whatever they were attracted to in the first place. Like if you're attracted to women, you will still be attracted to women once you've transitioned, whichever direction you're going, for example. So it's pretty neat. Hello, Titan. Hello, Squiddies. Lovely to see you all. If you're new here, my name's Ember. I'm a transgender woman, among other things. And I do shows a lot. This is one of the bonus ones because it happens to be my 700th day of transition. So thank you for joining. It's lovely to see you. But I also do a weekday morning show, 11 a.m. Monday through Friday, where we learn stuff. So if you're into that sort of thing, please take a second to hit the subscribe button. We are approaching the end of this show. We're not quite there yet, but I wanted to run through some questions that people frequently ask trans people, and that's what we're doing now. There's a couple of more. So yeah, I'll just continue along with that, but it's lovely to see you all. Okay, number 10. Did you play with Barbies as a kid? Okay, again, this is questions for trans women. I did not, but that's because my sister wouldn't let me have hers. I went rounds with my grandmother. She was like, no, you have to play with the G.I. Joes. Why, though? They're stupid, smelly soldier boys. I want to play with the Barbies. No. You have to play. Those are dolls. You need to play with the action figures. It's so stupid. Even as a child, I was like, this is so stupid. They're both plastic dolls. What do you mean? But yeah, I like the My Little Ponies better than Barbies because Barbies, I don't know, they seem kind of bubble-headed, overly privileged, I suppose. But the My Little Ponies, well, I mean, they were ponies and they were colorful, Oh, I digress. Does your hair grow back on HRT? Depends on what you mean. My hair has started growing a lot faster on HRT, but it's not nearly as fast as when I was a teenager. I think they mean hair loss, particularly because, again, questions for trans women, they mean male pattern baldness, right? Like receding hairline, bald spots, all that sorts of stuff. Yes and no. Not like other body changes, but it does stop it from getting worse because it's too much testosterone that causes that. When you start blocking your testosterone, you stop losing your hair. But also, if the hair follicles aren't dead, they will slowly wake back up, but I do mean slowly. Trans women who have reported some success in restoring, like their hairline returning to where it was, it takes years. I mean, hell, Finster is a teenager, basically. I think she's in her early 20s now. She had barely had any hairline receding at all. And she noticed that her hairline was advancing very slowly, that she had a bunch of little baby hairs right on the edge of her hairline. It's kind of a neat thing to see, but it does take a long fucking time, and no guarantees you'll get any of your hair back. Follicles are a bitch. Robin says eliminating stress also helps. Absolutely. And try prenatal vitamins. I've not tried prenatal vitamins, but I do recommend good vitamins to everybody because they're good for your nutrition. A lot of people are deficient in some vitamin or other and may not even be realizing it. It's pretty wild. Sapphire says, I played with stuffed animals. My favorite was a Pegasus. I had so many stuffed animals. My cousins had a pair of stuffed bulls. One of them had a red stuffed bull and the other had a white stuffed bull. I don't know how the hell I convinced them, possibly because they were in their middle teens when I was a small child. And they were like, I'm too old for stuffed animals, but whatever. I convinced them to give me the stuffed bulls. So I had a pair of bulls. And then when I decided I needed an invisible friend, it was also a bull. And so I had red bull and white bull and invisible. I thought I was very clever. But yes, I one of my favorite things about actually embracing my transition was stuffed animals. I was like, I'm getting a blowhigh. And oh my God, I'm so glad I did, because everyone needs a meter-long plush shark. They're so huggable. There's so many nights when you just have to hug something, and they're so great for that. They're also big enough to be a pillow. They're almost a body pillow from a certain point of view. And all the other stuffies, I wish I could get to my stuff right now, because I have a plushy chicken nugget dinosaur, and it's the most delightful fucking thing ever. You know what? Next show I do, bonus show, because the regular morning shows, we actually have stuff that is supposed to get covered. But the next bonus show I do, if I remember, someone remind me, I'll create one of those super chat goals. And if we meet the goal, I'll start showing off some of my stuffies, like the chicken nugget dinosaur, for example. It'd be fun. But you got to remind me, because I have to have it handy so I can actually reach it and show you and things. Darth gently says, yes, everyone needs stuffed animals. They're so great. And that's one of the great things about transition, is it kind of like it takes off the shackles from a certain point of view. You can do the things that you've always wanted to do, but you felt like you were never allowed to. Earrings was another big one. When I got my ears pierced, the piercer held up the mirror. I cried in the fucking chair. I didn't know I was going to, but it moved me so much, because it was something I'd wanted so badly for so long that I had buried that desire. I didn't even realize it was there. I got my ears pierced because it was a thing I could do, and so I thought I should do. I didn't remember how much I'd wanted it until it was done. And it meant so much to me. There's a lot of moments like that, and they're quite wonderful. All right. A few more questions. Oh, okay. There's 9 more. Some questions that I don't hear often at all, but could be asked. Okay. Have you lost strength or muscle mass on HRT? Yes. Holy shit, yes. So I used to work a very physical job before I was forced out of that job because I'm a trans person. If you know an employment lawyer, have them hit me up. I used to pick up very heavy things and move them around. Once I started HRT, my ability to do that greatly diminished. On the plus side, the more femme I looked, the more big, strong men would offer to move the big, heavy things for me, which was kind of helpful, because I reached a point where I started to have to ask my son to open pickle jars for me. I was bored. like right now, I'm having trouble articulating because I have so many different feelings over this. Part of me thought it was hilarious, and part of me was absolutely embarrassed. But part of me was having gender euphoria because I'm like, I have to ask my son, the big, strong man, to help. This is exactly what's supposed to happen at my age. So yeah, I lost a lot of muscle. I'm still strong compared to the average person, I dare say, but like I've lost a lot of strength. How do you deal with transphobia? It depends on the transphobia. And it also depends on a lot of other things, like what's been going on at the time. A lot of the transphobia that used to get under my skin, I just laugh at now because it's so bloody ridiculous. It depends. It's a lot of it depends. For the most part, I would advise somebody who's trying to deal with transphobia, think of it as like any other kind of bigotry. Like when somebody's being overtly racist, do you take it seriously or do you be like, this person's just being provocative? Or is this even really a person? Because on the internet, more often than not, it's just a bot. Why would you waste time arguing with a bot? You know? So that's a thing to consider. How can we reduce transphobia in the world to make it a better place for trans people? There's a lot to be discussed there. We do not have time for that whole conversation. Suffice it to say, fight back against transphobia whenever you encounter it. Whenever you see somebody, even if it's a damn bot. You know, trans people shouldn't waste our time fighting bots. But if you see someone in a chat saying bigoted shit, call a mod's attention to it. If it's a bot, blocking them won't hurt anything. And it'll make the trans people know that other people care. And that, just that, makes such a huge difference. For example, number 4, are your experiences opposite to transgender men? I can't really say. I imagine quite a few experiences would be very similar, but other experiences would be opposite, and some might not have any relation to each other at all. That's one of the reasons I'd like to talk to Dr. Ben specifically about this stuff, because being a trans man, he has different experiences. So we'll see. We'll see. But I myself am not a trans man, so I wouldn't know. Number 5, what does it feel like to present as your authentic gender? This is a more difficult question than it might seem. On the surface, fucking amazing. It's not just liberating. It's not just psychologically freeing. It's not just more fulfilling, like the ability to have stuffed animals and shit. I could always do that. It was just kind of frowned upon, you know? But no one would actually stop me. But now it's not just allowed. In some ways, it's encouraged. It's considered a cute thing to do. But physiologically, it feels good to be inside my skin because my skin literally feels different. It's sort of like taking off an itchy wool sweater and putting on something soft and smooth. It really feels like that on the inside of my skin. And to have had that kind of irritation my whole life and have it be gone, that's a huge relief. But to have it be replaced by something that's nice and feels good, it's blissful in a way I really can't describe. And it makes me wonder, do cis people have that feeling of their body being right their whole lives? Because I feel kind of robbed. Like, is that what it's supposed to feel like to be alive? Holy shit. But that's just, you know, it's a complicated question. But those are some examples that maybe demonstrate a little bit about what it's like. Do you find it's hard to find women's clothing that fits? Me? No. Weirdly, so I started to lose a lot of weight when I started my transition because, weirdly enough, I suddenly found I cared about my health for the first time in many, many years. And so I started to lose a bunch of weight. It was harder at first because I was a 2X, 3X large-ish size. But as I've shrunken, it's gotten easier and easier to find sizes. Like this, for example, one of the reasons this is such a tent on me when I don't tie it is because it's a 4X. And now I haven't actually checked my sizes in a while because I was dealing with an eating disorder. That's a whole other unrelated story, but suffice it to say, part of the treatment is I'm not like hyper measuring myself the way I was before. But the last time I checked myself, I was between a size 2 and a size 8, depending on things. And those are pretty common sizes. So it's really easy to find those. So yeah, it's not that bad for me. But again, things will be different for everybody. Let's see. Do you like the same things that cisgender women like? Well, what things do cisgender women like? Can you categorize all cisgender women into women like this and women don't like that? Because I know women who don't like perfume. I know women who don't like flowers. I know women who don't even like cherries. I know. Who can imagine? But there are. So what do you mean? The same things that cisgender women like? The things that I like are things that cisgender women like. Often, some things are a little gender nonconforming, like, for example, being a visible person on the YouTubes. There are cis women who do that, but it's not super common for cis women, you know? I know some women who play sports. That's not traditionally a woman thing either. So what do you mean, you know? But a lot of the things that I like are things that cis women like too. Number 8. Are you okay? Fuck no. I do not have time to get into all of this. I think most of you understand a big part of it, though, because a lot of my existential dread is the same as your existential dread. We have the same president trying to get all of us killed. We have the same political system that's grinding us all down, that's trying to pit us against each other while the billionaires rob us all blind. We have the same oligarchy making life intolerable for all of us, and we have the same corporations trying to make our environment and planet uninhabitable. We have a lot of the same problems. Yes, there are some trans people specific ones that make me be not okay. But a lot of the things that make me not okay are the same things making you not okay. We have a lot more in common than you might think. Is there anything I can do to help? Yes. It depends. What can you do? Do what you can do. That's all you can do if you follow. But try to show up. Try to be supportive. Try to advocate. Try to tell bigots to shut the fuck up. The same as you would do for every other minority group. If you would interrupt someone who's saying shit about black people, do the same thing when people say shit about trans people. If you'd interrupt someone who's speaking badly about women, interrupt them when they speak badly in the same way about trans women, because trans women are women. Or when they're being misogynistic towards trans men, because trans men are men. Stand up. Use your voice. Be loud. That's what it means to be an ally. But do what you can do in your own way. And last, do you have to take HRT for the rest of your life? That depends from person to person. You don't have to unless you've had your organs removed for whatever reason. And again, like I said earlier in the show, a cis person who's had their gonads removed needs to take exogenous hormones too. I used to work in an office. Well, I worked in a building that had an office. The office, all the women worked in the office. All the men worked out in the warehouse and driving the trucks, except me. I was the only woman truck driver. sometimes the girls would ask me about taking HRT, but it wasn't because they were curious about trans people. It was because they were all on HRT too. All of them were taking estrogen for various reasons. For some of them, it was birth control. For some of them, it was premenopause stuff. And for some of them, it was different reasons entirely. None of it is any of my business. But the point is, in this company, where there's a total of maybe 10 women who work there, all of them are on the same HRT I'm on for the same reason. Being on HRT, it's a thing that women do. And I'm sure there's a number of guys running around, cis men and trans, who take testosterone for the same reasons. To have more virility, more energy, more metabolic oomph. We've heard the ads about maybe it's low T, consult your physician. There's a lot more cis people than trans people taking HRT, but we all take it for the same reason. To have a better life, to have a more balanced hormonal system, to feel good about being alive. And that seems like a really good place to leave things. I feel slightly stymied because I had so many more questions pulled up, but we're approaching an hour and a half and I plan to go for an hour. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you. I believe that's President Sunday's group for dropping by. It's lovely to see you. I hope you come back and visit us again. But for everybody, thank you for being here for my milestone. It really, really means a lot to me. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon. Have a good night.
You could be larger than life.